Hello, good afternoon. It's just a little bit after 12, and I've got my thing plugged in. If anyone is here and can hear me, it looks like somebody was here. There's one like, and oh my goodness, you guys, have you seen that Netflix dropped their 3-part series about Gabby Petito? I had to binge watch the entire thing as soon as I found out late last night. I finished it this morning. It's phenomenal. There's a lot of new footage in there that we had no idea about. A lot of Gabby's raw footage. And it's all actually Gabby and real life. None of it is like played by an actor. They do some narrative overlay of Gabby's voice that's artificial intelligence, I think, but it is really, really good. Let me do my regular stuff and get going with this live. Do I call it a podcast? I guess I don't know. I don't know what it is. I've only been doing it for 2.5 years. Why should I know what it's called? Please hit that like button if you don't mind. Oh, look, 2 people. Hello, hello, my dears. If you want to say hi, please do. And I promise you that there's not a mod here to delete your comments. That happened yesterday, and she felt so bad. She felt so bad. She said she threw her phone on the bed while she was modding to like get dressed or something, and she didn't realize what had happened until she heard us talking about what had happened. And then she said there was no way for her to undo the deleting of the messages, the comments in the chat. It wasn't all of them. It was a lot of them, though. And I don't know. I don't know what was up with that. Maybe it's because it's from her phone. Maybe if she was on a laptop, she could undo them. Anyway, there's so many little ins and outs and everything. So I do have it set for 60 minutes to be able to be in the live chat. And I don't know if I can modify that. I probably can't. Let's see. I'm afraid to touch anything. I'll just leave it like that. I usually have it set just for 20 minutes. So if you're here and you've been a member or a sub for more than an hour and you want to say hi, please do. And if you're here and you've been, you're not a sub for more than an hour, I apologize for that. That's kind of mean to put it at that level. I didn't really mean to do that. I'm not that mean, really. Please hit that subscribe button if you'd be so kind. Don't hold it against me that I put it on 1 hour today by accident. Share a video of mine or share my channel with somebody that you think might like it, please. And turn on your notification bell to ring. And what else? So I watched the entire Gabby Petito Netflix series, and I just wanted to run down it with you. There's also just a lot of information pouring out about the Delta crash that happened in Toronto yesterday that originated from Minneapolis. I also discovered a huge bombshell about Elon Musk. And I'm just looking at my lighting and thinking that I'm kind of washed out. What do you think? I can maybe adjust it a little bit. That's the thing with the lighting, is it's easy for there to be too much light, also easy for there to be not enough light. Elon Musk's father, I wrote his name down because my mind just goes blank with all of the information. Errol Musk had 2 kids with his stepdaughter, you guys. This is absolute truth. You can write it down. You can Google it. You can Google it while we're live. Elon's father raised a stepdaughter and then had 2 children with her. So the second child was when she was 35 and he was 76. OMG. So not only did Elon grow up in a very violent South African apartheid, he also has the craziest family dynamic, maybe right up there with Woody Allen. 2 kids. What a sick freak. Sorry, Not sorry. I'm going to be judgmental about that. That is disgusting. Interesting too, because just yesterday we were talking about age differences and relationships, and I was saying how, I'm one of these people that really believes that love is timeless and ageless to some extent, although it can get awkward with a big age difference. Um, 35 and 76 is pretty cray cray, even if they're not a stepchild and a step parent. A stepchild and a step parent, I don't care if they're not by blood, that is incest. That's disgusting. That's like the whole situation with Woody Allen and his who he called his wife's adopted daughter. His wife that he was married to when she adopted Soon Yi. And my heart breaks for Soon Yi because she was like 13, I think, when Mia Farrow and Woody Allen adopted her. Or at least maybe that's the age she was when he started abusing her. I have to Google to be accurate. I'm not 100% sure on that. Anyway, it's all she's known. She gets adopted into this family where I don't even think she spoke English when she was adopted into the family. And she's been, in my opinion, a prisoner of Woody Allen's ever since. So disgusting. And we all remember the trial in New York City when he was not convicted of what he should have been convicted of, in my opinion. So yeah, I'd say that Elon's got some serious demons, and then he's projecting that out onto the world. He's projecting that into our government with all of this crazy mass firings, and that's a whole nother video, but I did want to touch on that. So I wanted to spend the majority of today's video doing a little bit of a breakdown of the Gabby Petito Netflix. It was really, really good, you guys. I highly recommend it. And look, I see 3 people here. So where to begin? I'll just kind of go over some of my notes here. Oh, if you haven't seen it yet, hey, Valerie, hello. How's it going today? If you haven't seen, or have you seen the Netflix? I only found out yesterday at the end of the day. I think I saw some people had done some videos critiquing it. And I was like, holy crap. And I looked up Netflix, and sure enough, it's a 3-part series. So Gabby and Brian did spend the night together, the night of the domestic violence call at the Moonflower, in Moab and at the Delicate Arches. They did disobey, imagine that, the law enforcement's strong recommendation of not contacting each other. So they did spend the night together, the night of the 12th. One of the things that the series didn't cover at all, Valerie says, not yet. There's something fishy with his parents. Oh, completely. Well, spoiler alert, I'll just spit it out. I still think that he's alive. I think that his missing thing, and then finding his dry sack and ball sack, I have to say that, his dry sack and his tooth. What was it they said in that his body decomposed to the bone, and that he died of a gunshot wound to the head. In a very short amount of time, his body allegedly decomposed to the bone. So the fact that there's a gunshot wound to the head, that could be anybody. That could be anybody's bones. And if you've seen photographs of his alleged bones online, it looks like kind of like a ransom note with all the different letters cut out from all the different magazines. Like, they're all different shapes and sizes and colors. I don't buy it at all. Plus, they said the place was full of alligators, so wouldn't they have eaten the meat and the bones and then shat out the freaking bones? Okay, let me do my disclaimer real quick. Yeah, his parents are disgusting, Valerie. So is his sister. They all need to go to jail. They all need to get charged for all the money that law enforcement spent looking for Gabby and looking for Brian, in my opinion, in my humble opinion. So everything I say is simply my opinion for the sake of hoping to start a conversation, open up a discussion, and learn something and be educational. All of the videos that I make are for YouTube. It's an entertainment platform. I'm just counting the pages because I do have a lot. I have about 4 pages of notes. That's not as bad as I thought. I thought it was more like 5 or 6. So, also, you'll remember that the law enforcement clearly articulated during the midstream of this interaction with this domestic violence couple. They clearly articulated that if they mishandled the situation, a domestic violence victim could be deceased in a very short period of time from that moment. And they were, I think, insanely identifying Brian as the victim rather than Gabby. And I don't know why they would do that other than the fact that the lead detective, I can't remember his name right now, the guy with the beard, who had been, it'll come to me, or I can Google it. He had been accused of domestic violence with his girlfriend. He was a chief of police in a town south of there, I think. Oh, Chris Pratt. See, all I have to do is touch my phone. I need one of those freaking chips that Elon wants to graft into our brains. No, I'm kidding. I don't want that. But no, I touch my phone and it comes back to me. Chris Pratt is that lead detective with the big beard who was like training everybody. And then the town that he was the police chief in, that he had to quit because of his domestic violence perpetration. Salinas. Again, I didn't even finish typing. I'm not kidding. Salinas, because it's the same name as the town that Barry Morphew and Suzanne Morphew lived in Colorado. But he was the police chief in Salina, Utah. So he'd only been with the Moab Police Department for a couple of years. I believe he was a sergeant at the time, or maybe he's been promoted to sergeant since then. I know everybody that was on that call has been promoted. And I think that that's atrocious in and of itself. I would think that any of those officers watching that, other than Melissa Hull, who was the park ranger, I would think that they would be insanely embarrassed watching themselves on that video footage. I mean, they made complete asses of themselves, in my humble opinion. I'm just looking around at how crazy the lighting is. You know what it is? It's because outside is bright and this is like a blackout curtain, but there's light seeping in up high, and that ambient light makes it so that I'm all washed out. Let me see if I can make a little less light so that it's not as I'm not as radioactive looking. It might not bother you guys, but it bothers me. I think it's terrible when there's too much light. Even worse than when there's not enough light, in my opinion. But anyway, back to the case with Gabby. The footage that she made for her YouTube channel and the footage that you get to see in the series is priceless. I'm surprised that more of it wasn't released sooner, because it gives you so much insight into the big picture and into her relationship with Brian Laundrie. I mean, some of the looks on his face, like when she says, look, we have all this room back here in the back of the van for your dirty feet. So his dirty feet were a huge point of contention in their relationship. And he kind of smiles and laughs. And then he makes this look like he's dying inside or he's got to kill somebody. I mean, I'm not kidding. Watch it and see if you agree with me. But, you know, he didn't like to wear shoes. He liked to hike barefoot and then make things filthy. And that's disgusting. I mean, I don't think that's just a girl thing and a guy thing, but Gabby was the one who took care of everything. He was the one who was doing the driving. It's illegal to drive without your shoes on, I'm pretty sure, in every state. I mean, your feet can slip off the pedal pretty easily, but it's really wild to watch the interactions that are caught on tape that did not make it to YouTube until now. Valerie says it's too bad she did not get out when he went to, and it's FL in Florida, right? She was trying, Valerie. Wait till you see the series. She had actually contacted her ex-boyfriend and spoke with him at length. I think his name was Jackson. And he looks a little bit like Brian Laundrie, oddly enough. Really nice guy, says that she was his first love and that she contacted him from Utah or from Salt Lake City. It was, I think, while Brian was in Florida that she contacted him and they spoke at length. And she said she wanted to break up with him and she had a plan, basically. So it sounded like from the interviews with her mother that she was already talking about breaking up with him the day of the domestic violence call. And there's not a whole lot of insight into that, but it is really revealing that a breakup was imminent. And that's typically when domestic violence perpetrators strike and when it's the most dangerous. So I can only imagine. He'd only been back from Florida for a handful of days when when he took her life. So the dates, we know that the domestic violence call was August 12th. This was 2021. And then they didn't mention anything about Kylan Schulte and Crystal Turner in the documentary, which really bothered me because I'm still convinced about that too. And I'm thinking that they hooked up on August 12th and that they went to the bar, the real famous bar, Woody's Tavern, and played pool. That's always been like the rumor that came from people that were there in Moab at Woody's Tavern that night, was that they showed up. And we know that Crystal and Kylan were there because we've all seen the surveillance footage of them buying some beer. And then maybe the footage of them is from the 13th. I take that back. I'm not sure. I'll have to double check. It's from the 12th or the 13th. It's pretty late in the evening and they're having beer. I think it's Friday the 13th. And I never realized until just now that that was Friday the 13th, because then it was Saturday the 14th in the morning that they were both shot 6 times in the backs, in the rear ends at their campsite at about 11:30 in the morning. And they really keep a tight lid on this, but I'm pretty sure, and trigger warning, I'm pretty sure that neither of them was clothed from the waist down. They really keep a tight lid on that. They really keep a tight lid on everything about Kylan and Crystal. And that's ridiculous because a double homicide is huge. And especially in the midst of all of this crap. So anyway, back on track with what I was saying. The Mary Piglets, you guys. The situation at Mary Piglets, remember there was a stressful interaction. So this all happened on August 27th. So the 14th was the day of the double homicide, whoever did it. We'll leave that open. And then I think it was the 16th or the 17th that Brian flew to Florida and Gabby checked into a Holiday Express or an establishment similar, maybe like the Fairfield Inn or something like that, right by the Salt Lake City airport that Brian flew out of. So the story was that he was flying to Florida to clean out a storage unit, and she was staying at the hotel to put to do some editing. And she did editing, and she put her first video on Nomadic Static on the 19th of August is when she posted that. And then about a week later, or maybe a week and a day or two later, she was deceased. So she finally was fulfilling her dream and then snuffed out. So he left for Florida about the 16th or 17th, I think the 17th. And then he came back around the 24th, I believe, give or take a day. And then the Mary Piglets, I think that happened on the 27th of August. I think. I know I wrote it down in here. Her last cell phone activity was on the 27th. So I always thought that they went from the Mary Piglets in Jackson Hole to the Whole Foods in Jackson Hole, and then to the camping area at Spread Creek at the Grand Tetons in Jackson, and that was where he killed her later that day. So her last phone activity was on the 27th. But I wonder if that's the last phone activity that they think was actually her, because then we all know he was using her phone to text to her mother. He was also using her phone to text to himself. So he was making texts back and forth. There were two people that picked him up in the Grand Teton National Park area while he was hitchhiking around. We probably all remember one of them. They both picked him up and gave him a ride on August 29th. One of them was named Miranda Baker, and I don't know if I wrote down the other one, but they're both in the videos. They're both in the documentary. So the burn after reading letter, you guys, I always thought that was in the dry sack. That was found at the Laundrie's house when the Laundries were alleging that he was a missing person. So they allowed the police to come in, and that's when they confiscated the burn after reading letter that Roberta had written to her son. Disgusting. Absolutely disgusting. Oh, and at one point, you know the part in the Gabby Petito story where there's people interviewing Cassie and her husband in front of their house. Cassie's the real heavy set and stout older sister of Brian Laundrie. She's like 10 years older than him. And it's JLR. You can totally recognize his voice. He's kind of badgering her, but in a reasonably polite way, but really pushy. And that's what I like about him. I know he's a controversial character and he's got his past, but don't we all have our past? And aren't we all controversial in some ways, right? Anyway, when he does good work, I really appreciate it. And I think he did some really good work there. We won't talk about the people he hung out with there in front of the Laundrie's house, because those are people that I don't have any respect for. So when the police first arrived to the Laundrie's house there in Northport to ask them where Gabby was, because Gabby's mother was making a missing persons report in the town that she lived in. Is that called Blueport or something like that? Northport is the town in Florida, and then it's Blue something is the town that they were from in Long Island. And Roberta and the dad, Chris Laundrie, that's the dad's name. I think I mixed those names up a few minutes ago. Chris Laundrie is the dad, Roberta's the mom, Cassie's the sister, Brian is the beast. So they admitted to the cops that Brian was there, but that was all they would say. They literally said, he's here and we have an attorney, right? And then they gave the cops the business card of the attorney. And the cops did a pretty good job of trying to push to get more information, but they weren't going to give anything. And it is also apparent that Brian called his parents, had a 55-minute phone call with them on the 29th. So the same day that the two people picked him up, hitchhiking around, and he was hiking all around. He had a 55-minute phone call with his parents. And then immediately when they hung up, they called a local attorney in Wyoming and wired the attorney $20,000. And then there was a flurry of calls between Brian and his parents the rest of that day. So that tells me that he confessed to them what had happened and that he needed help. And so they knew damn well what happened, because why else would they be wiring $20,000 to somebody that they've never met? So I got to check this out. Towards the end, or at the very end of the documentary, Gabby's mother has this family picture that they took at the site where she was unalived on the 1-year anniversary. And in the middle of the photograph is a huge orb, Valerie, a huge, like, egg-shaped orb. And Gabby's mom swears that that's not a doctored photo, and she believes that that's Gabby. And if that's true and accurate, that's phenomenal. I know, I feel bad for her. She was a kid. She was 22. And yeah, I mean, my oldest daughter is almost 23. She'll be turning 23 in a month. So yeah, I just can't imagine something like that happening with somebody that I cared about. I mean, it's hard enough hearing about it happen with somebody that you've never met, right? I don't think we will ever know, like Watt's case with NK. Well, I think that they're going to try to keep it secret for the rest of their lives. They're going to try to take names to the grave, just like Scammy Smith in the Kylie Rodney case. I can speak in the Kylie Rodney case. But I'm hopeful that the truth will come out. I think that if Brian Laundrie is still alive, that someday, even with plastic surgery, he could be recognized. It could be brought to light that he faked his passing away. And then if that were to happen, and then his parents were to be discovered as co-conspirators. One of the things they didn't mention in the series that really bothered me that they didn't mention it was the raised garden bed boxes in the backyard of the Laundrie's house, because I am convinced that he was hiding under there. Are you, Valerie? You know what I'm talking about, right? That's the sad part. It is so sad. Sick with the money. One good thing, they have the foundation. Yes. And Gabby's video that she posted on the 19th, before she was found deceased, it had like 500 views, and now it has something like 7 million views. Millions of views. And so I would imagine that they are making money off of that YouTube channel, off of the Nomadic Static, and off of that video. So yeah, it's still there. I looked it up on YouTube. The channel is still there. And that money is probably partially funding the foundation that they have in her name. If I knew what I know now in my 20th, yeah, I know. Valerie says, you could be right. You're probably talking about Brian still being alive. I mean, when they talk about the things that were in his dry sack, like photographs of him and Gabby, or they don't mention it, but there's the Moab coffee roaster's hat that's in there. They don't really mention a lot of what's in there other than the photographs of him and Gabby, to like that identifies it. Like, oh yeah, well, it's his because there's pictures of him and the deceased girlfriend in there. So obviously it's his bag. Where's his effing ID? We know he had a driver's license. He was the one driving the van. And the police asked for his driver's license in that video, in the body cam footage on August 12th when they pulled them over. So we know he had a driver's license, and nothing has ever been said about his driver's license being in that dry sack. I don't think it was. I think he took his driver's license with him. I think he got a passport. I think there was a lot of stuff going on with Roberta and Chris, and they were coming and going from their house a lot during that time when he was allegedly missing. They had the cooperation from law enforcement saying that they thought Roberta was Brian, and so didn't they didn't notice that he wasn't around for days on end because they thought that she was him, which is impossible. Like, that's just a blatant lie. And again, they'll admit to being complete buffoons. They're not going to admit to being completely corrupt, but they're trying to hide their corruption with sheer buffoonery, which is oh so admirable, right? Such integrity, such ethical behavior. So they were going to like the cell phone company, I think. Chris and Roberta were going to Verizon. They seemed to be, if I'm remembering right, like going to the post office or somewhere where they could have been getting a passport made. I do not know. I mean, they had high-powered attorneys. They had Steve Bertolini, like the mobster attorney from up there in Long Island. the town in Long Island that's bothering me. Sorry. I'm a little OCD like that. Where was Gabby from? It was Blue something. It was the police department, Blue Point. Okay. It was the police department that took the missing persons report and then pushed really hard on the Northport police, because the Northport police were very reluctant to help, although they did do a good job, in my opinion, looking at the body cam footage. And then especially because they did what they were supposed to do. They did their job. They looked up the license plate from the white van parked in their driveway, and they said, that's Gabby's van. It shouldn't be at your house. We're towing it away. So when they towed it away, what did they find in the back? I would imagine that there was probably a lot of evidence in there. It was never needed for a case against the person that unalived her, since he disappeared. But again, like you said, Valerie, in the Watts case, that information, the evidence that was in the van, should still be made public. I mean, in my opinion, but I believe that the Laundries had an in with the Northport Police Department. I believe that they had an in with the FBI. I believe that Roberta's job up in Long Island, where she worked for the government for 25 years, that gave her a lot of connections. There was also an uncle, so either Roberta or Chris's brother, I think, in the Northport area, who was a dentist. And, I mean, really, I think the only alleged part of Brian that they found that morning, an hour into their, an hour after they released the park to be open to the public, and Chris and Roberta went in there. 1 hour later, Chris claims that he found the dry sack, and then I think the police went over to the area where he claimed he found it, and they found a tooth. And then I think, if I'm remembering right, if this is accurate, Chris pulled out the dental records of Brian's from his back pocket and was like, oh, look, the tooth matches. It's definitely him. Did I imagine that, or did that actually happen? I mean, the stuff is so surreal, you can't even begin to try to make it up. Yeah. He was mentally sick. He was absolutely mentally sick. And it was, I think, very apparent. And I think it was more and more apparent to Gabby in their relationship. And that even before the DV incident, on the 12th. I mean, we know that he'd been doing that with her already. I mean, in the videos, it looks like she kind of chronically has a swollen right bottom lip. And I was trying to pay really close attention to see if that was just like the way her muscles around her mouth were when she spoke, or if that was because she had been hit on that lip recently. And it really looks like a fat lip to me. So I believe that that's what it is, but I'll continue. I'll probably rewatch it and see if there's parts that I can identify where it's not swollen. It's like right there, there's that one scene where she's coming out of the tent in the morning and she's like, there's Brian, he's doing his morning yoga. And she looks like she's been crying, and it looks like her face is a little bit swollen and the lip is very swollen. And it looks like she's just, she's trying so hard to put this YouTube channel together. And, she's fighting an uphill battle, which, yeah, to be learning it while she's out on the road, that wasn't like the best plan. But then again, she's only 22. And so, they're not 22-year-olds aren't necessarily going to have the best business plans laid out. She was very intelligent and she had a lot of wit about her. But I would say try to get the website going before you take off on the trip, right? I mean, at least try to get it started and then try to learn the ropes. But she was doing it on the fly, and, in a sense, more power to her. She'd worked hard. I think she saved money. They said that like the car was both of theirs, but the car was only in her name. We know that he transferred money to himself from her account. That was why they were able to get a warrant out for his arrest. It was like a $700 transfer on a something I'd never heard of. What was it? The name of the Cash App. Zelle, Zelle. I've heard of it, but it's been a while. So he made a $700 payment from Gabby's Zelle account to himself. And he was also using her credit card at the gas stations to drive the van home. So he was texting to himself from Gabby's phone. Yeah. Let me go through my notes here and keep up with you, Valerie. Thank you so much for being here and being in the chat, being so active. Blue Point, there you go. I know it's funny because it's North Point down there in Florida, and then Blue Point, or Northport in Florida, and Blue Point in Long Island. So yeah, it gets a little confusing. That's why we try to write things down, right? I did not know Mom worked government. I don't know what her position was, Valerie, but she worked for the government in Long Island for 25 years. And then the parents also had a juicing company. That's, Gabby worked for them for the juicing company. And then Cassie and her husband, I believe, had a juice machine repair parts company or something like that. It was very lucrative for both of their families. Like they both were raking in millions, I believe. And Valerie's from Long Island. Very cool. Are you from that part, the North Shore, where Blue Point is? Or are you from the southern part where Amityville is, or out there in the Hamptons? You don't have to say. So we don't want anyone to come looking for you. I don't know if you're even still there, but you know how that is. We like to be private on the interweb, right? So yeah, the cell phone data, that last phone activity that they know for sure was August 27th. And I believe that was the same day as the Mary Piglets. So what had happened at the Mary Piglets, remember Brian Enton from News Nation tried to talk to the employees at Mary Piglets, and they were like told that they weren't allowed to communicate with anybody about anything. So there's video footage, Valerie, of their food and them inside at the restaurant. The food looks delicious, but the situation that blew up was that Gabby said that the smell of the food made her feel sick and she went outside. Remember, there was all the talk about how they were arguing and she was crying. And then Brian was getting into fights with the staff and he kept going back in and fighting with them more. And they had to have the manager deal with him. And I think it was all women, even the manager, because, you know, he seems like such a sexist, but that if it was a guy, it might not have been so, he might not have been so argumentative and controlling. But he was demanding to not pay for the food. And it sounds like in the video, in the documentary, that Gabby pretty much ordered him to say that he wasn't going to pay for the food because, sorry for all the noise in the background. Let me go yell at my family real quick. Hey, people, I'm on live. Can you please keep it down? Thank you. Okay. Sorry. Where was I with the Mary Piglets and the food and Gabby not wanting to pay for it? So, you know, it brings a question to my mind that I haven't pondered much, but I know other people have, which I want to know if you have a thought about this, Valerie, is wondering if she actually might have been pregnant. Because her feeling sick from the smell of the food at the restaurant makes me think maybe that could have been morning sickness. It could have been anything. It could have been that the food just made her feel sick because it didn't smell the way, you know, it was nauseating. And it could be the stress of the interactions that she was having with Brian and, you know, having been at the hotel alone for those days. And then he was back. So she was having to deal with him again. He'd only been back for a handful of days. And obviously it wasn't going well because we see on the videotape surveillance footage from the parking lot at Whole Foods when they pull up into the parking space and Brian gets out of the van and slams that door like he's trying to break that van in half. And then they go in to Whole Foods and they wander around and it looks like they don't buy anything, but it looks like there might have been some shoplifting. So I don't know if there was financial trouble. You know, they were like 41 days into their road trip, I think. And there was a part where Gabby's mom mentioned that she had given Gabby $200 cash when they first drove up to Blue Point. Is it Blue Point or Blueport? No, I'm all confused. Northport and Blue Point, right? So when they drove from Northport up to Blue Point to say goodbye, I think that was like June 2nd. And then her mother just slipped her some cash to say, you know, have a good trip. Just, you know, this is for an emergency or something. And yeah, I mean, I know Gabby was selling stuff on like an online, I don't know if it was like Posh or, you know, that website. She was selling a lot of her clothing on that. And I don't know if she was doing that from the road. She might have been because you could ship stuff out from anywhere, but then she'd have to have all the stuff with her. But that might have been like her little bank account. I mean, who knows? It sounds like she was really good about working hard and saving money, but 41 days into a road trip, man, all that food and gas is going to add up. And how are you going to replenish the funds? I would imagine that their families would have helped them out, but it's probably very, it's, I think, really stressful for most young adults to ask their parents for that kind of help. And the suggestion might have been, well, maybe you should stop traveling and start working some more and saving more money. And they didn't want to stop traveling. They wanted to continue on their way. So um, I am not there anymore. I was about a half an hour away. Oh, awesome. Yeah, I've been to Long Island at least once, maybe more than once. It's beautiful. Man, New England is beautiful. It's shockingly um, like rustic and rural and natural. When I think of New England, I think of it as being so developed because of all the cities and it being like the oldest part of our country. But there's so much lush forest and woods and wildlife. It's absolutely gorgeous. Yeah, the money goes fast, doesn't it? And especially when you're on a road trip. I mean, I remember taking like a 1-day road trip to Colorado with my boyfriend when I was about 19. And we drove from Ohio to Colorado and back. And I want to say we spent $200 the first 24 hours on the way there. And that was just gas and fast food. I'm pretty sure. And that was back in the 80s. It was $200 one way. I mean, this is why you make peanut butter and jelly sandwiches, right? I mean, the Mary Piglets, that bill, I think it was like $41. I think that they've shown that. That might have even been shown in the video footage too. But, to go out to a fancy, quasi fancy Mexican restaurant like that when you're on a road trip, when I first heard the story, when it was first going on that summer, I thought, man, they're like rich kids eating at a restaurant like that when they're in the middle of a month and a half long road trip. I was thinking they must be loaded. They must be spoiled rotten. But it doesn't sound like they could afford the food. And that's why Gabby was trying to not pay it. I mean, honestly, we ate at a restaurant in Cincinnati after the Josh Johnson comedy thing a couple of weeks ago, and it was called like the Ford Burger Barn or something like that. It was a really cool restaurant, really upscale burger barn, because there was a Ford factory there, and it's all like themed, and it was pretty jacked up prices for burgers. So I wasn't too amused with that, and I wasn't very hungry either. So I ordered soup. I ordered the French onion soup, and it was really disgusting, and I could barely eat it. I didn't eat very much of it, and I'm not that picky of an eater, and I was trying to share it with my family, and they love French onion soup, and we couldn't finish it. And it didn't even occur to me until like a week later that I should have sent it back and gotten a different soup. So, I mean, it was gross. It was gag worthy. I've never had French onion soup that bad. But it's just interesting to me, like, I don't know that I've ever sent anything back or refused to pay at a restaurant. But I've always thought that it was kind of rude the way that whole thing went down. And it's very odd to me that that was coming from Gabby. That she was the one basically ordering Brian to do what he did, but she was like the bank, she was the responsible one. She was the one who made the money. Hey, Anna Bees, what's going on? So yeah, did you lots of money in the 80s? Yeah, the $200 for one day of one road trip. Because yeah, we just drove straight there from Ohio to Colorado Springs. We just drove straight there, straight through. I don't think we stayed at a hotel. I think we just drove for like 24 hours straight. Anyway, Anna Bees, we're talking about the Gabby Petito series, as you probably saw in the title. Have you seen it? Maybe it was him doing it. Well, so yeah, back to my question of wondering if that she might have been with child. I mean, I think people ask that often when a woman is deceased, and it is a very stressful thing to have an unplanned pregnancy. we don't know what type of birth control they were using. And depending on what type of birth control they were using, it might have been harder to be consistent while traveling on the road. Like, let's say she was doing like the Depo-Vera shot, if I'm saying that right. You have to redo that shot every 90 days. So if you're on the road and you're due for it, you could probably stop at a Planned Parenthood or something, but I don't know. You'd also have to be very organized to do that. Um, and that's probably, I would think that that would be the most common type of birth control for somebody her age, 3, 4 years ago. There's also like the implants, and then of course there's contraceptive pills. There's old school other things. We don't need to get into much detail, but I remember when her case first came up and people were questioning if she might have been with child, and I thought it was kind of ridiculous because it seems like that's always a question that people want to throw into these cases just to like make them more interesting when there's no evidence of that being a thing. So I've never noted any evidence of that being a thing other than her being nauseated by the food. And it could be that it was something else, but it could have been um, morning sickness. My husband would drive straight through to Arizona from Missouri. Yeah. Yeah. When we moved out here from Seattle area to Ohio, I flew out with the kids, and my husband drove a moving van towing one of our cars. And then he flew back, and then he drove another moving van, and then he flew back, and then he drove. We had a big truck that you couldn't tow on one of the vans. So he did it 3 times, and he was like going for a record. I think he did it in like less than 72 hours. Like, it was crazy by himself all 3 times. I was very happy with his performance there. Because our initial plan was that we were going to each drive a Penske moving truck because we had so much stuff that we brought with us. It was ridiculous. We should have just gotten rid of everything before the move. And a friend was going to drive with us. She was volunteering to drive with us. And we had 3 little kids at the time. So somebody would have needed to kind of corral the kids. And then the friend backed out last minute, which, that's her prerogative, but it wasn't very cool. It was like a week before, and we'd been planning it for many, many moons. So when she backed out, I just was like, me and the kids are going to have to fly. There's no way that we can do a drive like that without somebody being hands-on with. Our kids were 2 and 5 and 7 at the time. So the 2-year-old was just about to turn 2. The 5-year-old had just turned 5, and the 7-year-old, she was mature for a 7-year-old, but anyway, she wouldn't have been able to hold down the fort with the 2 little brothers for a several day cross country trip in a truck. Anyway, yeah, road trips can be fun, but they can be stressful. And that tiny, tiny little van that they had, I can't imagine being in that confined of a space with anybody for 42 days, no matter how much I loved them and no matter how well we got along. 42 days in a tiny confined space like that would be extremely stressful. And then throw in the financial stress on top of that and trying to start a business. And family businesses are always the most stressful. That's always going to be like the hardest in a family dynamic. So, I remember being pregnant and I couldn't handle many smells. Yeah, exactly. It makes you very sensitive, very, very sensitive. So let's see. What else do we have here? Just the idea of Gabby at that August 12th traffic stop, that look in her eyes, you guys, to me, it's just piercing. Her like ice blue eyes, and they are just like so full of fear. It looks like she's a cornered animal knowing that her death is imminent. And then, you know, she's saying everything she can to defend Brian and denying that she's been hit in the face, denying that she's been hit in the arm, even when it's like right there in front of the police and they're asking her directly about it. And she's like, not only denying it, she's also just like not responding to their questions. And that's where the poor training on the law enforcement, it's on them. It is on them. They can be very stressful. All our trips back and forth to Arizona would be a test to our marriage. Yeah, the way a couple travels together is very evidentiary of how that couple is going to hold up over time in a marriage. So, fortunately, my husband and I travel well together. I mean, we've been together for 33 years, I think. We got married in 92, so it'll be 33 years this summer. But yeah, I don't know that we've done that much driving. We were on a long road trip with all four of our kids and three dogs 2 summers ago. It was during the summer of 2022 because the last day of the trip was when Kylie Rodney showed up in the news that she was missing. And we had been camping. We'd been on like a 10-day camping trip in a minivan. And it was actually pretty easy with the three dogs and the six of us. I mean, that's a great testament to the dynamic of the family, because we were packed to the gills with all the camping equipment and everything. It didn't sound like my idea of a vacation, but it was a really good vacation. And we stayed up on the north shore of Michigan at a place called Picture Rock, Painted Rock, something like that. Gorgeous, 26 miles. Let me look it up so that I can recommend it for anybody who wants to go there. So gorgeous. Pictured Rock. Yeah, Pictured Rock National Lakeshore. 26 miles. It is phenomenal. So we were there at one campsite for a week. You know, we spent a few days driving up there, stopping at a sand dunes campground, because it's like a 10-hour drive from where we are up to there. It's long, but we made it back all in one shot. But on that last day was when I found out about Kylie Rodney. And it was always really interesting to me because we were camping, and that whole bullshit story with Kylie Rodney that they were camping, that they were going to go camping, and, you know, that everything happened at this campground. And, you know, I think because I'd been on this camping trip was one of the reasons why I identified with her story so strongly. And it just, none of it added up. You know, I said it in my last video yesterday. Like, I think the entire narrative in Kylie Rodney's case, the entire thing, pretty much from head to toe, is solid bullcrap. So I think that's why we've had so much trouble trying to figure it out, you know, and it's a great testament to everybody's perseverance and attitude, you know, just to keep plugging away when we're just hitting brick wall again and again and again. But I think that's why we're hitting brick wall again and again and again. It's because it's all a freaking pack of lies. So back to Gabby. Let's see. It was so obvious something was going on. Yeah, it was so obvious. I think that she was pretty much out of his league. I mean, if he was a nice person, he could look cute and act cute sometimes, but he wasn't a nice person. He had severe personality issues, severe emotional issues, and those showed up over time. Those especially showed up in that small confined space together. And he was really against her doing the YouTube channel that she was trying to build. And they talk about it in the in the documentary that maybe he was concerned that she would catch things on the footage that he didn't want anybody to see, like when he gets all pissed off when she talks about his dirty feet and stuff like that. And I think that's pretty accurate. I think that, you know, I know from my own experience with this channel, like you can't hide anything, and you don't really want to hide anything. And if you are trying to hide things, you're probably, it's going to be very stressful. I mean, you just got to be yourself and talk to the camera the way you talk to a friend, because that's pretty much all you have. I mean, sure, you can have a script, you can have a character, you can, try to play somebody else other than yourself. And I love it when some of the content creators do that. I remember Sarah Cooper does a great job playing characters, and that guy Casey from Lake Time with Casey or whatever, he did a great job with characters. I think that's a fantastic talent. But anyway, that's kind of a tangent. I mean, really, you're just dealing with yourself. And if there's things that you don't want to share with your audience, you probably shouldn't be on the tube, because it's going to show, or it's going to show that you're hiding it. Probably it's going to show that you're faking it. But really, it just takes so much energy to lie. That's the thing. And people with personality disorders, and I would say that Brian has a personality disorder, it's easy for them to lie. It's easy for them to put up an act, but only for a finite period of time. And that's where the personality disturbance really shows, is when this person over time. And then when they're in a stressful situation, that's where the cracks really show, the personality crack, so to speak. I would not want my husband dirty feet. I wouldn't want my own dirty feet. I mean, seriously, that's just gross. And it's also unhealthy. I mean, there's literally like germs and dog poop on the ground. You don't want to be bringing that into your house. And they were living in their car, so that was like their house. I mean, I've always had a rule in my house: no one wears their shoes in the house, because it brings a lot of germs into your home, and it's not wise. I know that there are a lot of people who don't abide by that, don't care, and they wear shoes in the house. And I mean, it's kind of ignorant. You get more sick more often if you allow people to wear shoes in your home. So that's something we've never really talked about, huh? Do you guys do the leave your shoes at the door, or do you let people wear shoes in the house? It kind of boggles my mind when people let folks wear shoes in their homes. And, and in a van, it's like, yeah, you're going to have your shoes when you're outside, but like even Gabby would like leave her shoes at the back of the van when she'd step into the van, right? I mean, we all remember seeing on the Red, White, and Bethune videotape footage, when it was slowed way down, that there were sandals at the back of the van. I mean, let's get through the rest of the tape. Sorry, that's on me. We're an hour in. Get through the rest of the 3-part series. Let's see. Wanted to highlight that one. I thought I had. There's a look in Brian's eye that reminds me of my sister-in-law. Oh, I hope your sister-in-law isn't as scary as Brian. I mean, he might be schizophrenic. I think that he is definitely personality disordered. It seemed like there were signs of schizophrenia. And my sister-in-law looks like Stefan Stearns. Oh, that's really frightening. I am so sorry, Anna Bees. I wear slippers in the house. See, that's what you're supposed to do, dear. Very smart. I know I'm usually barefoot in the house, but yeah, it's been so cold lately, so I've been wearing my slippers in the house. He always had something to say. Her YouTube She would have been good at it. Yeah, she was really good at it. I mean, just, she was a natural. She was absolutely a natural. I am in socks and PJs if I'm at home, not going out. Good. That keeps the germs out. Oh, son-in-law, not sister-in-law. Ooh, well, better to have a son-in-law look like Stefan Stearns than a female, right? But still, I'm very sorry. That must be stressful. Watching another channel, missed first hour here, so we'll watch on replay. Hey, Fred, thank you for being here. Do you want to share what you were watching? Curious. There's so much on these days. Oh my goodness, there's so much freaking material. It's insane. So we've got all the stuff with the airplane crash. We've got all the stuff with the Doge and all the layoffs. And then I started out this video, Fred, talking about something I just discovered today about Elon Musk's father impregnating Elon Musk's half-sister. His dad has 2 children with the stepdaughter that he raised. So his father is a sick freak, in my humble opinion. And Elon grew up with this and lives with this. His dad's name is Errol Musk, and the woman's name is Jana, Jana. It's all over the internet, so I'm not doxing anybody. The last name is Bezuidenhout. So a couple of years ago, when she gave birth to their second kid, she was 35 years old and he was 76 years old. So I think he's about 78 now. And so she would be about 37 now. I also watched an interview with Elon Musk's brother, Kimball Musk, and that was very eye-opening. And then I saw something right before I came on. It looked like the Kennedy Center got canceled. I was like, wait, what? I don't have time to look at that before I start my thing. Because we all know that Donnie appointed himself to be in charge of the scheduling of the Kennedy Center events. And there were several artists that were scheduled to perform that canceled because they thought that was insane. And then I saw something that the Kennedy Center looked like it was canceled altogether. I don't know. I do not know. Anyway, getting back to this, that burn after reading letter. I always thought that burn after reading letter was found in the dry sack at the park where they pretended that they found Brian's tooth. But the burn after reading letter was found in the house when the parents reported that Brian was a missing person. But, he had their car, their nice little like Ford convertible, I think, at the park. And the police knew that it was there. I mean, the whole thing is such a sham. And nothing about Crystal and Kylan Schulte, Crystal Turner, nothing about them at all. That really infuriated me. So the Red, White, and Bethune, they were the heroes who had that videotape footage of the van right there, not too far from, was it like 1,000 yards or something like that from where her remains were discovered? But they would have discovered her remains anyway, because that exact spot where the van was is where the last ping of her cell phone activity was on that same day. So they knew that was where they needed to look. So they found her remains on September 19th. There were hiking boots like placed next to her remains. She was laying on her side, like in the fetal position. So she'd been out there for over 3 weeks exposed to the elements. And the law enforcement definitely believed that the entire crime scene was staged. And it's just absolutely terrifying to think about what she went through with that final fight and just that was 2 weeks and a day after the police mishandled this case, saying that she was the aggressor, this itty bitty waif of a girl with this. I mean, Brian's not a big guy, but he was lean and muscular, and men in general have a lot more physical strength than women do in general. I think like 2 times or more, just average. It's crazy. It's just the testosterone hormone, I guess. And that reminds me of a tangent that Donnie Jr. is wanting to start a new Olympics where you're allowed to use all of the testosterone and steroids that you want. Like, doesn't that sound safe? Not. So let's see. The video at Mary Piglet's, when they had the scene there, was at about 1 p.m. The Bethune video on the 27th was about 6 or 6:30. The last text to mom that they think was actually Gabby, I think, was at 7:15. Oh yeah, and then at 8:30 she was on the computer, and there's even like drone footage of her. She was really smart with that drone. Like, she really knew what she was doing with the drone stuff. That was cool. So at 8:30 at night, she's making drone footage of herself on the computer, and she's rearranging her files. So when the Bethune truck went by, the van, she was in there, and because her shoes were at the back, so she was probably in there. Anyway, interesting. So the last text to mom that they think was actually her was about 7:15. That was the last contact that the mom had with her. And then 8:30, she's on the computer. And then it was the very next day, it was the 28th of August at 1:20 p.m. that Brian called his mom, and they had a 55-minute call. And then when they hung up, his dad called the lawyer, immediately wired an attorney in Wyoming $20,000. So to me, that's pretty evident that he told them exactly what happened, and that's why they retained the attorney. And then he started texting himself with Gabby's phone back and forth. And then he was pretending to be hiking around the area, getting rides from people, and then texting Gabby, and then he had Gabby's phone with him, and he was texting himself back. And the texts were like, back to back. So, I mean, that's how texts usually are, unless you don't see it for a little bit. But anyway, I really want to know where his ID is. I really want to know. And then just that gunshot wound to the skull that they say is his, and then them saying that all they found on day 1 was a tooth, and then all they found was a jawbone, and then all they found was bones, because he was decomposed to the bone. But really, if he had decomposed to the bone there, the dogs would have smelled him. They were like, oh, well, it was all underwater. Doesn't matter. Cadaver dogs can smell underwater. Come on. And there were alligators that would have been eating him and pooping him out, which is what he would have deserved, right? And Rose, there's a lot of footage of Rose in the documentary, and she just seems like such a lovely young woman, and she cared so much for Gabby. But she said as soon as she heard the news that he was found, that she knew it was bogus. She knew it was fake news. So I'm with her. Anna B says, it is stressful. My daughter is going through so much. I am so sorry to hear that, Anna. And I'm remembering what you shared last week too. So let's all say a prayer for Anna's daughter and for Anna. It's like Anna Nicole Smith. that whole situation. Oh, with the old man that was like in his 80s when she was in her 30s. Eesh. Yeah, the billionaire. Fred says, watched allegedly speculating live in 30 minutes. If the judge grants the motion to suppress Stefan's phone evidence, will we even have a case? Oh, no. That's frightening. Oh, that case just makes me nauseated. I agree that Brian had something to do with Crystal and I think it's Crystal and Chiron unaliving. Yeah, yeah, and I think that that's why he left town 2 days later, was to dispose of the weapon and and just to get the H out of town. I mean, isn't that what anybody would want to do if they'd committed crimes like that? And then if Gabby knew, if she knew, or maybe she didn't know and then she heard about it on the news when she was staying at that hotel for that week that he was in Florida. Maybe she said something to him like, "Oh, Brian, check it out." I don't know. I mean, I don't know if she would have caught wind of it or not. But I've always wondered about that. And Anna says, I also agree that Brian is still alive. Yeah. I think it's really naive to think that, when they've never fabricated his driver's license. And like I said, you can Google to look at a photograph of these bones that they say are his that look like they're from 24 different people and animals and stuff. I mean, they are seriously all different colors and sizes, and nothing is connected to anything, which, yeah, it probably wouldn't be, but it also took them like a year or more to come up with that. Like, it's pretty easy, from what I hear, to fake someone's passing. It's pretty easy to purchase a cadaver on the dark web and, fake it. And then, especially with a gunshot wound to the head, if somebody's been shot in the head, that's not, no pun intended, or pun intended, that's a no-brainer. Then you can use that and say, oh yeah, look, he shot himself in the head. Unless you have all the like scientific, mathematical, like trajectory of everything, you wouldn't be able to prove that it was or wasn't self-inflicted. And then also, if it was self-inflicted, there would have been a weapon out there. Why did it take me 2 years to think of that? 3 years, 3.5 years. They never came up with the weapon, did they? The weapon would have been there with him. That's crazy. But see, those pew-pews are expensive and they didn't want to waste the money on it, right? There wasn't a weapon recovered at the scene, was there? I'm pretty sure there wasn't. I'll look into that. So, Fred, I hope they don't throw out the phone evidence. It's recorded. He gave permission. And Valerie says, yes. And Anna B says, I don't know about the weapon. Yeah, I don't think it was ever recovered, because that was one of the things they tried to say about Crystal and Kylan, was that, oh, well, they were shot and Brian didn't have a pew-pew. And it's like, come on. Anybody driving a van across the country, to a young couple, better have a pew-pew or they're setting themselves up. I mean, it's a dangerous world out there. But if he didn't have a pew-pew to do that with those two girls that he might have had a beef with from the day at the Moonflower co-op, and thinking that one of them might have called 911 with the domestic dispute. If he didn't have a pew-pew then, how did he get a pew-pew to do himself in out there in the park? I won't even try to say the name of the park. It has way too many letters. I think it's like connected to Carlton Park, which is easy to say, but it's like seriously like 12 or 15 letters, and it starts with like an MYK or something. It's too much. Now I'm curious. I'm sorry, I made myself curious. The park where Brian was found. Oh, Myakkahachee. How in the world are you supposed to say that? Maikakahatchee Creek. Maikakahatchee. I think I said it. And yeah, Carlton Reserve. Okay, I got that part right. It's brain twisters, right? I do it to myself. Yeah, I hope they don't throw out that phone evidence. That would be terrible. But they'd probably have enough of a case against him anyway. I don't know. I do not know. Let's get through the rest of this. Yeah, where is his ID? We need his ID. Oh, the best part, you guys. How could I forget this? Where he writes his suicide note. It's found in the dry bag, and it says, "I have killed myself by this creek." That's a quote. "I have killed myself by this creek." OMG. Like, are they trying to be funny? Because that's comical. "I have killed myself by this creek. I am writing you this letter from beyond the other side." Give me an effing break. All right. So I mentioned to you about the huge orb in the middle of the photograph that Gabby's family took when they went there to honor her on the 1 year anniversary of her passing. And it's just so sad. She was the oldest of 6 kids. Her parents were like 20 when they got married and had her, and they split up, I think, by the time she was 6 months old. And then I thought she had a brother that had the same mom and dad, but maybe it's different moms and dads, because they both hooked up with their current spouses pretty quickly after they separated. And it was like a very amicable divorce. Like, they just didn't feel like they were a good match. And then they all stayed really tight. And then I think the crisis with Gabby made them even tighter. I've never seen a family handle a crisis like that so well. So well. Lethality assessment. This is something that her mom came up with. It's 11 questions for law enforcement to ask domestic violence calls, to ask at domestic violence calls. I was going to look that up and share it with you if I can find it. The lethality. "11 questions." I'm sure one of them is, have you ever been choked out by this person? Because that's crucial. The lethality assessment for domestic violence typically consists of 11 questions that focus on key risk factors like weapon access, threats to kill, strangulation, recent separation, controlling behavior, and jealousy, used to evaluate the potential for lethal violence within a relationship. These questions are usually asked by a trained professional like a police officer or domestic violence advocate to assess a victim's level of danger. Has your partner ever followed or spied on you? See, like, that's what I wonder about in the Idaho 4 case with Kaylee and Jack D. Has your partner ever threatened to harm your children? That's an interesting one. Has your partner ever followed or spied on you? Does your partner control most of your daily activities? Have you recently left your partner or separated after living together? Does your partner have access to a gun or firearm? Do you believe your partner is capable of unaliving you? Has your partner ever tried to choke or strangle you? Has your partner ever threatened to unalive you or your children? Has your partner ever used a weapon against you or threatened you with a weapon? That's most of them. These questions are designed to identify high-risk situations and trigger appropriate interventions like safety planning and connecting victims with support services. So at the Gabby Petito Foundation website, there's like a help button, I guess, that you can touch that gives you local resources if you're in a domestic violence situation. I'll try to put that information, the Gabby Petito Foundation link, in the description. The lethality assessment is not a diagnostic tool, but a screening mechanism to identify potential danger. If a victim answers yes to several of these questions, it indicates a heightened risk of violence and immediate action should be taken. Yes. 11 questions that could save a woman's life. And though that was an assessment that was around prior to Gabby Petito's situation. She did have a beautiful aura, Anna Bees. Yes. Yeah, absolutely. Didn't she? She was a very, very pretty young woman. And I was starting to say a few minutes ago about how she was way out of Brian's league, in my opinion. Same thing with like Chris Watts and Shanann Watts. Same thing, in my opinion, with Kylie Rodney and Jägermeister. Just my opinion. That when women date somebody that that the person that they're dating might have this perception that the partner is too good for them. I think that heightens the risk factor too, like the possessiveness and the jealousy and the danger, and thinking that they'll never get anybody that good again if it doesn't work out. Okay, so Detroit got flooded. A neighborhood in Detroit got flooded in the last 24 hours. Have you guys heard about this? We've got the measles outbreak in Texas. We've got flooding in Detroit with temperatures below zero. There's just so much. The two tunnels with the car accidents that we were talking about yesterday, Fred, if you're still here. This like blitz attack in the government with Doge firing everyone. At the same time that the president is saying that he's going to be creating jobs for all these other people, like, but he's like killing the jobs of these people. Like, what sense does this make? Just deleting jobs, like 15,000 jobs right now with the IRS as people are trying to do their tax returns, deleting 15,000 jobs with the IRS. And with more than a dozen different agencies, I'm switching gears in case you couldn't tell, I'm going to wrap it up. So the dozen different agencies like defense and health and veterans, a lot of these people that are being let go on this blitz firing are unable to file for unemployment because they don't have the appropriate information to fill out the unemployment with. And then that whole disaster with the national nuclear weapons system, accidentally firing all these key people and then wanting to rehire them, but not knowing how to contact them. Freaks, like, OMG, like, just because you're against paying taxes doesn't mean that these government jobs are not important. And of course, all these billionaires are going to be against paying taxes because they're going to be having to pay billions of dollars in taxes. Like the 3 or 4 billionaires that were all with the president during his inauguration, they have all made many dozens of more billions of dollars since the inauguration. And that was only 4 weeks ago. Ugh. Our public health and safety is in a massive crisis, in my opinion. Let's see. And then the whole thing with the polio. Wanted to talk briefly about the Mickey Steins case, the sheriff who shot the judge, Kevin. What's Kevin's name? brain dead. Mickey Steins is the sheriff. Kevin Mullins is the judge that he shot. So I watched a video that Jules of All Trades posted yesterday, I think, and she had a very interesting perspective. It was like the body cam footage of the car ride with Mickey Steins, and they're taking him to the jail in the next county over because of the conflict of interest with him having arrested or being in charge of the people who arrested all the people in the local jail. So, Jules was wondering in her video why they were taking him to the other county. And I knew that information, but I didn't have a way to get a hold of her to let her know. But she's probably figured it out. She's really sharp. I could try to send her an email. Anyway, the thing that she pointed out with her sharp spidey skills is that Mickey Steins was articulating to the people that were driving him to this other county that he was basically articulating that he was very afraid. It was as if he was paranoid that they were like going to take him out to a field and just do away with him. Like he was concerned about where they were driving him to. And he, that thing he kept saying from the time that they arrested him, just, treat me fairly. And I thought that was a really interesting insight that Jules was making, that he sounded like he was fearing for his own safety from the people that he was the supervisor of. And you got to remember the context of all of this with the sexual abuse that his employees and other employees too. It's not like it was isolated to his department. I mean, it's like a widespread ongoing problem in that area, I think in all the different counties, with the law enforcement taking advantage of women that are addicted and having legal trouble. And, with the deposition that he had given like 3 days prior to shooting the judge, I mean, more and more of that deposition is coming out. I know that there's that channel, Hillbilly Crime, that she's got a lot of the information, and then she's going on panels and they're all sharing the information. I haven't caught a lot of the details yet. It is a case that really interests me. But yeah, the thing I wanted to say about Gabby in wrapping up with her channel creation, the Nomadic Static, and you guys can look it up. I'll put a link in the description. And, we can watch her video that she posted. We can be members. It's still an active YouTube channel. The thing that I think would be very challenging for her being a content creator is her perfectionism, because I'm like that too. I'm a perfectionist. And to some extent, you just have to let go of that. You just have to go with it and say, it's not going to be perfect. And that's just life. However, having that kind of perfectionistic attitude, I think, helps to make that type of thing happen. So, it can also be her Achilles heel, though. And wanting things to be so perfect when you're traveling on the road and you're trying to make these videos and you're trying to get good lighting. Like, lighting is the hardest thing, and the natural lighting is the worst. So, in some of the videos in the documentary, she's talking about the lighting. She's like, oh, the lighting here is really bad. And yeah, I mean, that is the thing that really surprises you, I think, when you're new at this. Because I would have thought natural lighting would have been like the best lighting. And no, it's absolutely the most worstest. And if you're trying to get perfect with your lighting, it's without like a studio and professionals, it's never going to happen, in my opinion. I mean, a lot of these channels that have great lighting, I think, are studios with professional assistants, or they've worked in the field long enough to know how to do it themselves. But so many of the YouTubers don't have good lighting, and I don't think most people care. But when you're a perfectionist, it's something that you care about. So, just and then again, as a woman, you're trying to make sure that your hair is okay. You're trying to make sure that you're not showing too much cleavage, probably. Like those things get really tricky when, especially when you're moving around and you're outside. So I can imagine how challenging it was. And then having to deal with another person, not only with another person, but an uncooperative other person. And there were a couple of times where she really snaps at him, and it's on the footage where I think there was one time where she said something like, "Well, if you knew how to edit, that would really help out a lot with this." And I think I've always heard that Mr. Laundry barely knew how to use a cell phone. That he was like even more um, incompetent with digital electronics than I am. So she was very adept, and also I think her dad was very adept, so she was able to consult with him as far as like building her website up from the ground and stuff like that. But the sad thing is she lost her life. What was that? 3 4 it'll be 4 years ago this summer. And the people that love her and care about her have to live with that, and it's awful, whatever the crap with Brian Laundrie is. I mean, if he's still alive, and I think he is, I hope he gets discovered. I hope he gets his comeuppance. I hope that his whole family does. The last thing I want to say before wrapping up is just remembering how Doug the bounty hunter came in to the story, and how it's like he was very helpful, I think. And I think that the law enforcement was very afraid of him, that being reality TV and just being unpolished, basically, that he really put the pressure on. Like things got resolved quickly when he came on scene. Like when he went to Moab to work on the Kylan and Crystal case, within hours they were like, "Oh no, we solved it. Remember, here's our presentation." And they did the presentation like the minute he got there. That was crazy. That was like, I think FBI government officials who did like this 1 hour or 2 hour presser, and the whole thing with that Adam Pazinski thing came out of the blue, as soon as Dog the Bounty Hunter showed up. So crazy. So let's go ahead and wrap this one up. Thanks so much for being here. She was way out of Brian's league, and Shanann was too, and my daughter is too. Oh, Anna Pease. And I mean, it's like, in a way, it's like more power to these beauties like your daughter and Shanann and Gabby, that they saw past the looks, that wasn't the most important thing to them. It shouldn't be the most important thing to anybody, but not to be sexist, but a lot of men are pretty shallow, and that's all they want is somebody that's good looking. They really don't care about the personality. They really don't care about the person. They just want a trophy wife. They just want somebody that's going to like bolster their ego. People on the right think he's cleaning up the government. I know that's the theory. Anna Pease. I don't know how anybody could be that ignorant that, yeah, there is some inefficient government spending, and yes, there's a lot of tax dollars that you're contributing to the accounts, and you might not be behind everything that they're paying for, but that's just part of living in a society. It's and then people that are extremely wealthy and extremely entitled think that they shouldn't have to pay for anything that they don't decide on themselves. And that's just not realistic when you're in a community. But if you kill everybody off and just live around a bunch of robots, yeah, you can do that, Elon. Thank you for the prayers for my daughter. Your chakra tower is looking so awesome, isn't it? It is so awesome. I love it. It's really gotten tweaked to a fine point. I'm still working on that purple for up here, I'll show you guys. I like to show you what's going on behind the scenes. So up high, I have a giant purple like globe that's filled with Christmas lights, and then all that other stuff. And then eventually I'll get a glass purple globe about 4 inches, about the same size as the rest of them. Like, I think they're all 4 inches, except maybe the bottom one might be 5 inches. So I just have it further away and then it looks like it's the same size. And then I also have, can you see this other giant one that's probably like 6 or 7 inches? So this one that's red and it's got a white light under it. And that one is actually like an amber color, but it has a red light under it. So this one is like a darker amber color with the orange, or it has kind of a yellow light behind it. This one is actually clear with a yellow light behind it. And then this one is green with a green light behind it, blue with a blue light behind it, and cobalt with a cobalt light behind it. So yeah, it's evolved quite nicely. When did I start it? Like an entire year ago? I'll have to go back and look at my videos where it first started to show up. And, you know, this thing I'd had for a long time is just like little orange candles. I want to say they were from Coldwater Creek or the Sundance catalog or something fancy like that. And they looked like little Saturns. They have like little stripes on them. Can't really see it too well. And when I got them, I just got them because they were a hot deal. They were on clearance and I thought they were cute. I had no idea what I'd do with them. This thing is actually like a pen holder. And then I've got like a little thing on top to make it look like a roof. I just love being creative with this stuff. This is one of my favorite things. And I'll wrap it up so I'm not going on and on forever. But can you see this little wrought iron gate? It's like actually wrought iron. And it's actually a gate. The only problem is that the gate falls off the hinges really easily. And it doesn't have a way to lock. Like, so it falls open. So I just keep it where something is behind it. And then there's other pieces of the fencing. This is my little tiny bird bath. Cute, huh? And then my little tiny wishing well. I know I said I wouldn't do this, but, you know, such a dork, I have to. Tiny little wishing well. So cute. Thanks, Anna, for entertaining me. And then this is so cool. This is like really heavy also. Like, I don't know if it's wrought iron. It's not that heavy, but it's probably steel. It's like a little, to me, it looks like an English mailbox. Isn't that adorable? And what else that's just too adorable to not hold up close to the camera? You can barely see this from so far away. This is a little tree with a little family of bunnies. This is like my total grandma dork thing. Look at the little baby bunnies in there. Is that so precious? And it's so fragile, and I'm always so worried I'm going to break it. So I try to just set it over here, make sure that it's on the screen, hopefully. Hope that nobody touches it. And then the rest of it we'll talk about another time. The tiny guitar, that thing has fallen down a lot. And then the little fairy hut. And the little gardening tool shed. Okay, I'm stopping. I know. There's just so much cool crap. All right. Love and light, you guys. Oh, you have bunnies too? Like real bunnies? Like Kelly from What's the Obsession? She has like 20 bunnies or more. I think she's got the big bunnies. I don't know. She's obsessed with her bunnies. She loves them. I think she might breed them, and like I'm not sure if she like gives them away or sells them. I know she's very careful about the recipients of her bunnies. And they're real, and she has to clean their cages all the time. And Anna B says, no, porcelain. Yes, I know. I love bunnies. I just love them. I know I have some others too. Oh, and I got a little hedgehog. Let me show you my hedgehog quickly. Because I used to have a hedgehog in my set, and I can't find it. I have no idea what happened to it. You know, before the squirrel, I had the hedgehog, and then I had the squirrel, and now I have this little wiener dog down here that you can't see too well. And it's so cute. See the wiener dog? That looks a lot like Mookie. But, and then the squirrel my daughter took back because it was actually her squirrel. And so I got this little hedgehog. I don't know how it'll show up on camera. See, it's so silly. It's actually like crocheted and it's squishy and it's got like beads on it. And so I got it for my set just like a few days ago. But then I thought, you know what? I need to give that to my oldest daughter for a late Valentine's gift because it's a cute pink. And it's just like one of those like little squishy things, like a stress ball kind of thing. But hedgehogs are so freaking adorable. All right, I'm done nerding out. Anna, thank you for entertaining my nerdiness. All right, I know I'm going to lose all of my fans by indulging myself. So have a great day. Love and light. See you on the next one. Make sure you drink your water, eat your protein, and just keep looking for the positive. And yeah, more love and light to your daughter too. Take care. See you on the next one. Thank you.